All right, so I got this kit from Baron Custom Accessories that is to help us remove the air injection system on the bobber. What the kit consists of is essentially 4 pieces. We have these machined metal plugs, which we'll revisit in a bit. There's 2 of them. There's a driving shaft for them, so we use it to essentially hammer them in place. So that's what that is. And there's a little rubber hose plug that will come in useful to block the system, but we'll actually not end up using because we're going to be removing the system entirely. So this is the entire kit. Now, what is the air injection system on the Yamaha V-Star 1100? Well, let me show you that. On the bike, one of the kind of very noticeable components around the motor on this particular motorcycle, as well as the, I believe, 650 version of it, is these metal tubes that run across and then plug into the exhaust ports on the motor. So there's another one here that kind of loops around the other side, which you can see right here. So these pipes are not the most prettiest of things, but the purpose for them is kind of like a rudimentary version of emissions and meeting emissions regulations. So what they do is both of those pipes, as you can see, kind of go into these rubber hoses, and behind the cover here we have a little air pump. So what the bike does is it injects air into the exhaust port. And once the exhaust port and the exhaust pipes are heated up, what that ends up causing is it detonates any unburned fuel inside of there, which is supposed to burn off any unburned fuel so that the exhaust coming out of the bike is cleaner and less carbon, blah, blah, and all that stuff. Now, the negative effect of that is that typically when you rev the bike, you end up hearing, when you let go of the throttle, these loud pops coming out of the exhaust. Some people like that. I find it kind of annoying. And really, I don't like the look of these pipes running around the motor. So the goal for today is to remove that system entirely. Those little metal plugs that you saw will end up plugging the holes where the pipes are driving the air into the ports. We're going to work on removing the entire system completely. But before we do that, let me show you firstly what the actual effects of the system are, so you can hear the pops and bangs it makes. And then what we're going to do is we're going to disable the system before we decide to remove it, and that's very easily done. I'll show you how to do that. Once we've confirmed that the bike can still run with the system disabled, which it should, we will start removing things. I know for a fact the pipes can be removed. The big unknown is whether or not I can remove the little air pump that's behind here without completely disrupting how everything's hooked up in there. I'm not sure if the pump itself is kind of like a structural piece in there to kind of hold all the other pieces, but we'll get to that. So for now, let's show you what this system does. So before we start the bike, it's important to mention that even in the instructions from the kit, they recommend that you put these 2 in the freezer until you actually need to install them. Reason for that is to make the metal shrink as much as possible, because these are meant to be one-time use, and they're essentially perfectly machined to be fitted in, and then as they heat up, they expand and lock themselves in place. So freezing them will make them a little bit smaller so that they'll go in easier. So we're just going to toss these in the freezer and pull them up one at a time as we need to install them on the bike. All right, so the bike is mostly warmed up, and this is what it sounds like when the system is still active. So listen for the pops at the end once I release the throttle. That. So that loud pop essentially happens more and more as the bike heats up even more. And when you're riding on the highway and you know, let go of the throttle, this happens a lot. So annoying, also probably annoys a lot of my neighbors. So we're gonna remove that. So let's bring the bike back into the garage and disable the system to see if that would make it stop doing that. All right, so this is what the system looks like in the book. So we have the two metal lines running to the different cylinders, and this is a top view. And then we have the pump here with an air filter kind of with an intake hitting behind one of the other blocks, and then this C piece here goes, I guess, to this other portion here, which that is the carburetor joint near the cylinder. I'm guessing that's just to detect the vacuum, so that the system knows when to pump. So more than likely this piece will likely go on here and cover the hole on the carburation side, and then we can remove all of this. But before we go ahead and remove all of this, there are two rubber hoses, essentially these two here. So those two rubber hoses that you see there, those are essentially the main system. So these two guys. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna unhook one from one side and the other one from the other side, and then loop it to the same portion. So essentially we're gonna do a U like this and a U like this. This will essentially turn off the system. Once we do that, then we'll essentially disable the system. So what we're gonna do is go and start the bike again and see if it still makes the pops and bangs. The bike should be able to run and not need this system and not make any of the pops and bangs. So that's what we're hoping for, and if it does, then we're good to proceed with removing the system. The first portion of which would be removing the metal pipes, and then driving the new plugs, which will end up going right there. As you can see, that's kind of like that metal fitting needs to be pulled out. So we'll get that guy out, and there's the same one on the front. And then we're gonna turn our attention back to this guy, which is held in by a few bolts. So this pump, this is that hose that goes to the carburation side that we need to plug up. This thing here is an air filter, and there's just a hose behind here, so we'll need to probably remove this cover to get all that out. And it doesn't look like the pump itself functions as a mounting piece for anything else, so we should be safe to remove it. So let's unhook these guys and loop them back on each other and see what the bike does. All right, so I've looped the hoses back on each other, so the system should be disabled. So let's take that and see what we can do, whether or not the bike still makes the pops and bangs. The bike runs, it still makes pops and bangs, as you can hear. Not as loud as before, I guess. The system disabling the system didn't necessarily remove that, but I think that's probably because this bike also has the aftermarket slip-ons, and I think it's probably not jetted. Actually, yeah, the old owner did tell me that it's not rejetted. So when we do change out the exhaust, I'll probably end up rejetting the jets to get it a little bit better fueled. Hopefully not as many bangs and pops, but for now, that's fine. At least we know the bike runs without the system, so we're safe to remove the system. In terms of Other things that I noticed that we'll need to play around with. So this little hose, I believe, goes up and tucks under here. Yep, you can kind of see it. Goes down there and then under the tank and into this little plug here. So that little rubber hose thing that came with the kit, we'll put here to plug up this hole and then unplug this and just pull it all the way out. I hope it's not attached to anything. I think in the manual it did show that there's some sort of orifice mid-ground thing in the middle. That we'll probably need to do. So if that's the case, that means that I gotta remove the seat and then pull the tank up so I can see it and then just take it out. But for now, let's let this cool down so I can actually touch it. And then we're gonna work on removing these guys, which are pretty much held by these two. And I don't think it's held by anything. The other pipe on the other side doesn't seem like. Yeah, there's no bolts holding it, so it's literally just that, and then these little screws on the ends to unhook it. So we'll see how I'm gonna fish that out without taking the exhaust off. Should be possible. Yeah, it doesn't seem like these two are connected, so I can take the front one off and then the rear one should just pull out that way. And then the front one, yeah, so it's just these two. And much like the back, there's a little tie thing there that I'll need to remove. So let's let the bike cool down and we'll do that. Now that the bike is cooled off, let's start by removing the left side pipe first. So to do that, I'm going to unhook the hose, undo these two Allen keys, and as well on the front side, right here, there is a little bolt thingy that tightens it so we can just pull it out. So let's do that and get things off the bike. All right, the metal hoses are off. They came out pretty easy. The back one, in order to remove it, I had to bend it a little bit just so I can get it around the exhaust on this side, because it was essentially getting stuck. It was kind of like in there through here, and then it wouldn't come out because of this. So I bent it a little bit. I don't plan on reinstalling it anyways. And plus, once I pull out the plugs that are in the motor, there's, like, once I pull this thing out, there's pretty much no going back unless I get a shop to manufacture me new ones that I can put in there. So that's fine. In terms of on this side, that bracket that used to hold the metal hose also held onto the clutch cable here, which is fine. This is stiff enough to stand by itself, and we are going to be replacing this with a foot clutch later on, so I'm not too worried about this. Okay, so before we move on to the pump here, let's try to get these guys out and put the new ones in. So from what I read online, I think you need a pretty long metal bar or screwdriver, and you just pretty much hammer them out. So let's see how that's gonna go. And the stock plugs are out, and this is exactly why they're not reusable. You can see I had to bend the back one this way to get it out, to loosen it up. Thankfully these things are made out of pretty soft metal, so you can just wiggle them out pretty easily. The front one was a little bit tougher, so I had to like really destroy it. So it's all garbage. Let's grab the frozen ones now and hammer them in. We'll do them one at a time, and we'll go from there. Okay, and after hammering in the pieces, the manual did say that in some cases they might not go fully in, so not to like over hammer them. That depends on how the engine is machined. So this one didn't go all the way in, but the other one did. So as you can see right here, that one's all the way in. So that plugs in those holes. Now what remains is the removal of this thing here. But before that, it's probably a good idea to just run a quick test, make sure the motor still runs. I'm expecting those things not to move, so we should be good. All right, bike runs, the plugs are in place, they're not moving, and it still backfires a little bit, but not as much. All right, now that we've plugged up the holes and removed the other pipes, let's try removing this guy. In order to do that, we're gonna take off this hose, and I believe there's a screw here and a screw here that are holding kind of the whole assembly. I may need to remove this cover in order to pull this out, but we'll see how that goes. I took off the side cover just to get this freed up, but then also there's two more screws under here that are holding everything. So let's take these off. There seems to be a lot of like oily gunk right around here, so I'll probably wipe this down before I close it up, as well as on the back side of the thing. I mean, look at this, it's disgusting. So we'll clean that up. I think it's probably because that system was also sucking in some goodness from the blowback. Anyway, let's remove that out of there. All right, and the pump is out with the filter. So pretty much it was held by these two. This one, there's another one that was kind of holding the whole thing in place right here, and this one at the back. So you do need to take off the side cover in order to take it off. So this is off. Now the only thing that remains is the hose, which is this guy here. Now, we'll need to see how I'm gonna fish that out, but essentially it connects to here. So I'll unplug it from here and then fish it out. I had to take off the seat to lift up the tank from the back so I can fish the hose out. It does have a connector in the middle that splits it up and then just hooked up on there. So I just gotta, pull it off of that. And we should be able to put things back together. All right, the new plug is on there. I had to actually rip the old rubber hose because it was so dried and hard that the end of it, I had to actually cut it. It was pretty much like glued to the metal tip on there. Either way, that's off. We should be good to put things back together. I'll just wipe things down and we're good with without the AIS system. All right, did some cleanup. The cover looks one cleaner on the outside, but also significantly cleaner on the backside. I don't know what was happening and where all that oil and gunk was coming from, but it's all clean. I also wiped down these areas here, so that's a lot cleaner. And some of the area here that had a lot of oily stuff on it. So this is pretty much ready to go back on. The seat and tank, I think we're gonna leave on just kind of sitting on there and not actually bolted in place. Reason for that is that the next project will likely be looking at the carburetors and what's going on there. So taking off this breather box, taking the tank off and pulling the carburetors off, potentially cleaning them fully. At this time I might just look into getting a jet kit, just because the exhaust and the oil filter we're probably gonna do next. But either way, good progress nevertheless. Let's put that cover back on and wrap up. Okay guys, the AIS system is completely removed. The bike should be operational much better right now. Should be operating much better right now. make sure to subscribe, hit the little bell for notifications when new videos become available. Check me out on Instagram at Balkan Moto 2018, and make sure to check out balkanmoto.com. In the next episode, we're going to start taking off the carburetors and seeing what's up with them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.